Hi everyone, I'm back to do another 3 Looks 1 palette. I did get the Nimya the palette. I'm not like a huge fan of nikkietutorials. I do really enjoy her content and I do find some of her tutorials historically have been really helpful. I think it's really great seeing how far she's come. I definitely really admire her skill and her artistry. She is very, very skilled with makeup. Like, I don't really like that she uses a video filter for everything, so you really can't see how products perform, but even without the filter, I've heard many people talk about how her makeup in real life looks really good. So obviously she's very skilled. So when she first announced that she was gonna have a brand Nimya, I wasn't super interested in most of it because skincare, lip stuff, but then she showed the palette and you guys know I'm such a sucker for blue and orange, so I decided to go ahead and pick it up during the free shipping promotion, so I was able to at least not have to pay shipping. And I'm really excited. I'm definitely going to be very, very honest with how things look. I'm filming right now at 4 in the afternoon or so, so I will be able to do kind of an 8-hour wear test since I usually go to bed around midnight. Hopefully I can be of help for anybody who is interested in this palette. So yeah, I use my Rare Beauty primer. So I'm going to start off with look number 1 and we'll see where we go. So I'm going to take B for Basic first because I think for this look I do have to go out this evening, so I'm going to make this first look be the neutral look and just kind of see if I can kind of get warmed up, kind of get a sense of this palette. Oh, this is a lot warmer than I thought it would be. I've only really seen other people swatch it and use it, like Robert Welsh and stuff. I haven't really actually I don't really like to swatch my palettes because my fingers are dirty and I don't want to get my stuff dirty. I'm just using a really huge brush to kind of buff it in. This will just be the base shade and hopefully other things will just kind of blend easy on top of it. I know she sometimes goes light and then dark and other times she goes dark and then light. She really can just do anything. Okay, so I think I'm going to go ahead and go and deepen things up using Sassy Classy. This first shade I used was a little warmer than I expected. I really need to wash my brushes. My favorite ones are all dirty, so I'm just gonna make do with the shapes I have. These shades are definitely really pigmented, so I'm gonna try my best to be kind of careful. And then I'm just gonna try and see if I can blend it out. Yeah, I'm literally just one light poke into the pan and I'm pulling up a lot of pigments. I'm not always the biggest fan of super pigmented shadows because I find them sometimes a little bit frustrating to work with, but we'll roll with it. Yeah, I feel like I'm having trouble blending it a little bit, so I'm going to go into Bronzer, kind of a midpoint between these two shades. I feel like this palette is meant to be used kind of like the way she uses it, where she uses a lot of shades to create each look. I feel like this palette, it wouldn't surprise me if you're intended to use kind of each shade and use a lot of shades to get the blend you want. I'm going to start taking Bronzer also down below the lash line. This is such a pretty shade of brown. I think the name is really accurate, but at the same time it's only really an accurate name if you have her skin tone. And then I'm gonna go into B is for Basic and I'm just going to sweep that around everything. And so now I have a really seamless blend. So this definitely is gonna be one where it's you wanna use all the shades. Makes me kind of nervous though for the blues. I'm kind of nervous. We'll see how the blues work. Yeah, so as you can see, it doesn't really blend completely smoothly in. But then when I switch to using which brush was I using? But then when I switch back to using Bronzer, the blend becomes really clean. I feel like I took Bronzer higher on this eye, or higher on the other eye, so I'll bring it up higher on this side and match. Okay, so this is the matte look so far. I initially was like, oh, that dark brown was kind of hard to use, but using Bronzer to blend everything out definitely really helped, so I was able to get a pretty smooth blend. So what I really want to do is I really want to use Supreme Queen. Use my finger. It actually has a lot more reflect to it and it starts to turn almost green, so that's interesting. Okay, yeah, it's almost more like a very old green gold with a hint of taupe. This is definitely a really unique shade and it's very smooth while also being really shiny. So it's not the shiniest I've seen, but it's super smooth and super shiny and it's really pretty. It goes on very thinly, so it's not like it doesn't feel thick. Ooh, that's really pretty. Okay, so I really want to go into Mr. and Mrs. Tutorials, which is so cute. I'm going to use this on the lower lash line. Definitely be careful or else you're going to get fallout. Let me take a brush and kind of dust some of it away. This is super sparkly, really reflective, so pretty. I'm probably just going to continue my tradition of if I don't have a suitable inner corner, I will use my own. So I'm going to work more on this outer corner. Today is just not my day apparently. I'm really not super pleased with the shape I'm creating on myself, but I definitely want to spend some time in 2023 really doing some really targeted practice mastering eyeshadow shapes. I feel like that's kind of my biggest weakness right now, is that my eyeshadow shapes kind of all end up looking the same, or if I mess them up, if I try something new or if I'm not really careful, I mess it up super easily and then it looks really bad. It's harder though because like most resources out there aren't really for people with monolids, but experiment on myself. I think this shape turned out a little bit more precise, but it's just still not flattering. Just because it looks precise doesn't necessarily mean it's flattering. Yeah, I kind of wanted to put one more shimmer here, but I think I've used enough shades as it is. I'm gonna take the Icicle shade from Jaclyn Cosmetics. It's not much brighter than this shade here. And then I am going to, okay, so inner corner highlights on, it's really pretty. I am going to go ahead and go back into the palette. I'm going to go into a little bit more of Supreme Queen, and I'm just going to kind of even out that transition between the two shades. This shade picks up really well on a brush, by the way. Just making sure that the two shades blend together better. I'm going to finish off my makeup. I'm probably going to go ahead and put on lashes today, but we'll see. Okay, I'll be back in a few seconds. Okay, so this is going to be my finished look. As you can see, it is pretty basic. Yeah, so you can see my whole face. I kept everything pretty much on the warm neutral side of things just to go with it. So overall, even though the eye look ended up being a little heavy, the face is so light that it kind of makes the eye look lighter now, I guess. I did use mascara and of course I layered it on so you can kind of see my lashes. For my blush, I used Clinique Nude Pop. As you can see, that's one of my most heavily used cheek pops. And then, as I said in my makeup favorites video, I really want to make it a point in 2023 to get more love out of my face palettes, because this year was definitely the year of singles and my face palettes were like super neglected, which is terrible. So I used the Jaclyn highlighting palette. I used this shade on my cheeks and then I used this shade on my nose. And I thought the gold would really match up with this kind of old gold shimmer that I have on my eyelid. And then for my lip, I kept it really light. I don't usually wear a lip this light. This is the lightest I'll go, but I wanted my lip to not really draw too much attention to itself, so I used Adobe from Kaleidos, this is such a great formula. So yeah, this is the look so far. I'm really enjoying this. I definitely am really excited to continue filming with this palette, which is always a good thing. And that'll be it from me. So you'll see look 2 in just a few seconds. Okay, I am back for look number 2. So disclaimer, it actually has been maybe like 2 weeks since I filmed the first look because I had to get caught up on some other products that came in, namely Pat McGrath and Star Wars. So I went back to my first video to try and remember what I used, but there might be a little bit of like a disjointment between this look and the next look, but I am going to be filming 2 looks back to back, so those should be more in continuity. And I still haven't washed my brushes yet, so for this look I want to do something that uses the blue. Definitely really interested in seeing how good this blue works. I'm always a little bit nervous about blues because I have an olive undertone. I used the Peilie's eye base and I used a little bit more than normal to really blank out my eyelids, so hopefully that'll help. I think I'm going to go ahead and start off with the shade Swish Swish here so that the blue has something to blend into. I'm just going to use it to kind of set the primer a little bit because I'm always really scared about using blues, and hopefully I stay in focus. I realized that I can actually change the f-stop of my lens on the camera screen, because like some lenses don't let you do that and other lenses you can, and I just learned like literally today that I can actually adjust the f-stop of my lens, so I set it to 9 instead of like the default of like 5, 4 or 5. And I know some people online were saying that if you film beauty videos to set the f-stop really low because it's not like you're moving around a lot, and I was like, because apparently I look like I'm constantly dancing in my videos. I just fidget and I move so much, so I turned it up higher than that, and hopefully that will help more of me stay in focus. So I'm just gonna put this where I expect to put the blue. It's such a light shade, you really can barely see it, so this is definitely because I know she is a really big fan of using transition shades, so it doesn't surprise me that there are several of these in her palette. And so now I'm going to switch to a smaller brush if I have one. I'm not really a big fan of these brushes, and I think I'm probably going to declutter them sometime soonish, but I'm going to use this Luxie, and I'm going to go into Royal Family, which is that deep blue. And I am just going to kind of go slowly. We'll build it up a little bit at a time. Seems a little bit firmly pressed in the pan. That may be a good thing though. I'm just going to pull it straight out. Okay, well that was not as painful as I thought it would be. I'm going to start blocking out the shape. Okay, well that was like way easier than I thought it would be. And it's not seeming to grab onto any area of my eye more than others, which I know is because I did put down a shade before that, but like I love how I got a clear line, but the edges are still diffused, and I like didn't really have to try to do that. Now that being said, I do think I'm probably not going to be able to build this up to look true to pan because it is on top of powder already. But I will take buildable blendable over pigment any day when it comes to shades like this. Not to mention, it would probably perform better if I used a higher quality brush. Just gonna put that out there. Luxie I think is like really good beginner brushes, especially their small detail sets if you have smaller eyes, but I found that after using them for like 2 years or so, I definitely feel like I outgrew them a little bit. So I'm just gonna see how well this layers. Using just very small amounts at a time, I'm also not getting any fallout, which is really cool. Yeah, I just like how like I felt like I didn't really have to try to do this. It's a little higher on this eye, but this eye is also smaller, so it looks higher because of the size difference of my eyes. I've always wanted to get into the habit of doing my left eye first, but then I just always forget. Yeah, so I'm not really building it up super true to pan, but at the same time I don't really mind. I'm still getting a nice opaque layer. Definitely looks like a dark blue, and as you can see, I really haven't had to put much effort into like blending it or anything, and that's always appreciated. So I'm gonna go back into the Swish Swish shade and just kind of touch up the tops. I want the top in particular of the eyeshadow to be a little bit more kind of diffused. I'm just using an angled brush so I can have the extra precision that I need. I am still trying to master that whole lower lash line thing. I feel like I just can never seem to get the angle right, and like where you hug the lash line and then where you start going below it. You keep trying enough times, you'll eventually get it right. Maybe I pull it too far in. Okay, so after that I am going to start working on the eyelid, and for that, okay, I'm gonna use this e.l.f. blending brush, which also does sometimes work really well for shimmers, and I really want to try using Level Up. So we're gonna be doing a really nice bold orange and blue look, and I kind of want to do like a pseudo cut crease. Ooh, it picks up really well on the brush. We'll see if this brush is a little bit big, so we'll see if I can keep it precise. And this orange does seem to have a darker base to it. Okay, yeah, so I'm gonna sweep it there. Okay, yeah, this brush is really big, so I'm not going to be able to use it for very much longer. Definitely picks up super easily with a brush though, so that's nice to know. So I'm going to switch to a smaller brush now. I just have this random Morphe brush. It's not really that great for anything, but it'll come in handy for now. I'm going to use this brush to draw a much more cleaner line, and I'm also going to use it to add that second layer for more intensity. And I'm gonna put something else here, so we're just gonna ignore that for now. Okay, so as you can see, I made a pretty clear distinction of where it's like supposed to be and then like where it ends, so it's almost like a cut crease, but not really. So I do really like how that looks, and I am gonna go ahead and take this shade on the lower lash line as well. And as I blend it out, I'm kind of seeing a darker, almost brownish base to it. So it kind of also works to give some depth to the lower lash line as well. Almost like I'm smoking it out by just kind of letting the base of this orange come through. And generally speaking, blue and orange can mix together to create some really pretty gradients. So that's why I don't really mind sticking them right on top of each other. Okay, so that's what that's looking like right now. Really, really like it. So, and I'm going to work on something between these two. And for that, I think I'm going to go ahead and go into this shade right here because it's neutral. And if I want to use the matte orange, I will. And I'm just going to sandwich that right in the middle. And I am able to layer the matte on top of the shimmer pretty well. I'm just following the diagonal. And then I'm gonna go back into Royal Family. And that kind of completes that back end of the shimmer. That went better than I expected, so I'm gonna do it again. I'm just using just one end of the brush. So now I've brought the blue in further, which is really cool. I actually really want to try a matte inner corner this time. I've not done that like pretty much ever, but I really want to try what happens if I do a bright orange inner corner. If I don't like it, I'll put a highlighter on top. It'll be fine. So I'll take this right here. I do really want to try neutral with a neon inner corner sometime. I'm gonna just pack this shade on. I'm gonna see first off how well it packs, because we'll see if it can pack. I have had some great oranges and I have had some really bad oranges. And then I'm gonna stick it in the inner corner. We'll see if I can pack it. And I didn't put any powder on the inner corner, so the eye base should be unset. It's not quite doing what I thought it would do. I'll try to use this Rephr 03. Okay, I think it holds better using this firmer natural hair brush. The other brush is a little bit more kind of diffuse and fluffy. Again, most of my brushes are in the wash, so I'm using a lot of suboptimal choices. Orange is fine, I just was using the wrong brush. However, I did kind of like using that brush to kind of blend out when I was using it, so I'm just going to use this to add a more diffused layer since that's what this brush is better for. And then I will pack on with this Rephr 03. And then again, I'm kind of pushing it closer and closer to the bridge of my nose. Okay, yeah, I do kind of like how that looks. It's not bad. I think the shimmer could still use a little more intensity. It is a little bit more of like a smooth foiled shade though. It's not like super glittery sparkly, but I'm gonna just use my finger really quick and see if I can't build up just a little bit more, just to make sure it really can shine in contrast to the matte orange and that they don't look like the same shade. And then I do think I could benefit from a little bit of sparkle just to really kind of make sure it stands out as like being a shimmer. So I am going to take more disco stick, and I'm picking up such a light layer. I'm literally just tapping my finger lightly across it, and I'm just going to tap across the orange, and now it's going to kind of add like a glitter effect, and then it'll be a little more obvious that it's shiny. Now disco stick does have a slight white blue reflect, so I'm just going to put it on the middle so that way it still reads as orange. But I just want to increase the textural contrast between the matte and the shimmer. Okay, so now you see how it's really obvious that the orange is sparkly and shiny, and then the matte inner corner. And then I do think that I could benefit a little bit from some of disco stick on the lower lash line, kind of for similar reasons, but also just to kind of add a little bit of a point to the look. So I'm just going to put a little bit in the middle. I mean, the point is the inner corner, but I think the lower lash line kind of was looking a little bit drab. And I'm using this to really mask the transition between the orange and the blue. Just be a little bit careful of how much you apply, because I could see some sparkles falling off. So you see how that really eases the transition and just adds a little extra something to my lower lash line. And I am just going to go ahead and kind of leave that very vague cut crease line just as it is. I'm not going to touch it, because if I do, I swear, I promise, I'm just going to mess it up even more. So here is my blue and orange look with a matte inner corner and matte neon inner corner, which is so unlike me, but I really want to branch out and try different looks this year. So here we are. I'm gonna go finish off the rest of my makeup and I'll be right back. Okay, what do we think? So I do have I got like this IKEA backlight thing, but I wonder if it's a little too big. I would really like to in the future have a setup where my background is like further away, but like I'm like crammed in a corner, so I hope it's not too distracting. I mean, I feel like it helps though. But disregarding that, this is going to be my finished look. I love it so much. I know I haven't had matching nails for forever, but like I've been trying to reorganize my sunroom, which means I haven't had a dedicated nail station for like months now. So yeah, hopefully I can do my nails sometime. But anyways, it's super different from what I usually do, but I'm like super into just really wanting to push myself, see what placements I can do, what color coordinated looks I can play with. Really want to do things so that my channel is not full of the same looks over and over again. And I just realized I forgot to put on lipstick, so hold on, let's do that together. I'm going to take the YesStyle lipstick. Oh my god, I need to dust everything. Everything's so dusty. I'm going to take the YesStyle lipstick in 43. I just got so excited to show you guys the finished look. And I didn't even put on lip liner. Actually, it's kind of pink, but at the same time, it's kind of like an MLBB shade, and my eyes are so loud. It's a little bit too pinky light, but I kind of think it kind of is like more subdued, kind of nudie tone, so I think we'll just go with this. Okay, well, we'll just call that the lip. So for my blush, I use the Jaclyn Cosmetics blush stick in the shade Swoon. I really like this blush stick formula. I like it more than I liked the M Cosmetics one, which is why I don't have those anymore. I did contour using the NARS Laguna bronzer in Laguna 01. I've just really been enjoying using this. It's so easy. It's like almost like a powder. That's how easy it is to use. So this is also my preferred choice to like travel with. So I'm going to be out of town for 2 weeks, and I'm probably going to bring this with me because I'm going to be traveling a lot further than just to like Nevada and that kind of general area. So I was not as far out as I'm going this time, so I am going to definitely bring this along so that, because this is not going to break versus my powders, which sometimes can break in travel, so I really like this. And then for highlighter, I initially was using my MAC and Pony Skies Cold Comfort, but that highlighter, it's honestly not as good as it was hyped up to be. It's kind of chalky and not super shiny. So I went over that with the Kaleidos Skywalker, and I don't know, maybe my highlighter preferences changed, but I like this way better. It's a little bit sparklier, but I love how this looks on me. Really, really pretty. Now I will say, kind of on my bare skin, it kind of leaves behind a really slight ashy cast, just very slightly, so I probably should have applied a little less than I did. I did also kind of put it under my eyebrows, and you can just see it really just goes up and over my cheeks. That's going to be this look. I absolutely love how this turned out. I did use Doe Lashes Moonlight. They are so long, so for the longest time they were just sitting in my collection, but they're actually really, really wispy once they're on, and even though they're way longer than I usually like, they're so like wispy and thin that I feel like it's not really covering up the eyeshadow. What do you guys think? Like, do I look okay in long lashes? You guys tell me, because I feel so self-conscious. I feel like I don't have the features to pull off longer lashes, but I've always wanted to, so I tried it today. I think it actually looks okay. The biggest reason I don't like long lashes is because I don't like when I cover up my eyeshadow. Like, I don't want to use my lashes to hide the eyeshadow. Like, if I put in all this effort, I want you to see the eyeshadow. But I think these are wispy enough that you do still see the eyeshadow. But let me know what you guys think in the comments, because I'll be curious. Like, what are your guys' preference for lashes? Like, just, you know, tell me. So yeah, I am going to go ahead, and I am unfortunately going to have to wash this off because I do need to film a second video after this. I am so far behind because I have so much to pre-film before I leave. But yeah. But with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and end this now, and you guys will see the third look in a couple of seconds. Hello, I'm back to do look number 3 with the Nimya palette. I will be focusing on the shade Final Boss, which is right here, and I'm going to use the shades in the palette kind of around that. So I'm probably going to, as usual, make sure I focus on shades I haven't used yet. I think this time I'll reverse it. I'll have the blue on the inner corner, the orange on the outer corner, and we'll see what happens. So this palette is very, very neutral. So the fact that 2 out of 3 of my looks ended up being on the more colorful side, I think is more a reflection of just me as opposed to the palette. So I'm going to start off with the shade Never Boring. I love the shade names in this palette. I think they are so cute and they are fun and wholesome. With so many eyeshadow palettes out there having, you know, kind of slightly more spicy names, or just even just more like very intense names, even if they're safe for work, they're a little bit more intense. It's nice to have a palette where the shades are all just so wholesome and sweet and relaxing. And I'm just going to use this. This is going to be the structural shade that I'm going to kind of use as my foundational shade, so that's why I'm sweeping it through everything, including kind of my orbital socket area. This eyeshadow primer from VDL is a little bit on the tackier end of things, so as you can see I'm getting a little bit more pigment out of it, and it doesn't have any real coverage. It is slightly blue, but I've never really noticed the blue doing anything. As you can see, I accidentally put way more pigment on this eye than on the other eye, so the easiest way to fix that is to just take a fluffy brush and a lighter shade and kind of just like go over everything. So I went into Bad Beach to kind of just smooth that out. Makes it look a little more symmetrical. And then I'll just use the same fluffy brush to diffuse the outer corner. And now it looks a little bit more symmetrical. There we go. Very easy to troubleshoot. I do really like that about this palette. So I'm just going to just layer it up a tiny bit more on my right eye just to make sure it matches the chaos that my left eye almost became. I'm going to use Never Boring on the lower lash line as well. beautiful shade. It's so easy to accidentally put way too much of this on, so light hand is going to be where it's at, but this shade is absolutely gorgeous and it just blends out with zero effort. Like, I know neutral shades are not quote-unquote difficult to formulate, but this is just so easy to use. There is some kick up in the pan, but I'm not swirling my brush in the pan. I'm just doing one tap and then I lift, and so I'm getting no fallout. It's just so easy. Absolutely been loving my experience with this palette. I really cannot think of a single bad thing about this palette so far. So now I'm going to go into Final Boss and I'm going to use my finger. It seems like it's going to be a dark base duochrome situation. Almost feels borderline multi-chrome. It's kind of got that grungy green brown shift to a very desaturated red. So both Level Up and Final Boss are not really the kinds of shades I go for super often. This in particular reminds me of one of the shades in Sugar High from Menagerie. Yeah, I can see this shade being used as like a neutral shade, but like it's kind of like, problem being that of course you can see that as I diffuse it with my finger, the darker base, the darker brown base kind of comes through and it's almost a little bit gray, ashy looking. But if you're into dark neutrals and you want something that kind of spices things up a bit, this is really pretty. So what I'll do is I'm gonna go back into my Bad Beach shade and I'm just going to kind of use that to blend out the top. So this shade is gonna end up being way more blown out than I expected. I was hoping to keep it tighter, but I must just be tired. I'm going to use a brush and I'm going to go back into Final Boss and I'm going to see if I can just like build this up a little bit and blend out the edges a little bit better, maybe kind of cover up the cast a little bit. Like, there's such a fine line to how you balance the blending. It's just so difficult for me and I'm not that skilled. So I did discover a very small brush stash of brushes I hadn't been using yet, so I'm going to use a Rephr 26 to do my inner corner work. I'll work on the outer corner in just a minute. So I do want to make sure I use every single shade in this palette, so this is actually not going to be blue and orange because this shade is so it's not actually orange tone at all. So this will be really fun to have just a little blue pop of color. Now this shade kind of looks, it looks on the brush, so I'm a little nervous. Okay, yeah, so this shade kind of reminds me of those crumblier ColourPop shades. However, it's much higher quality. As you can see, it is very shiny. It doesn't have as much sparkle. It's kind of hybrid foil sparkle where it's a little bit see-through. The base is not fully opaque, but at the same time, I'm not seeing individual sparkles and reflex. I'm still seeing more of a general shine. That's what I'm seeing. It seems that whenever a palette has a frostier or lighter blue shimmer, it always ends up being in this formula. For palettes that I've used, like Pat McGrath did that. A lot of other brands seem to do this where if it's this color, it's this formula. So I wonder if there's something with a pigment where it's not really flexible. It kind of picked up on the brush in a way that made me nervous, but it actually looks really great. I feel like I was able to really spread it across my eyelid and it smoothed out, applied evenly. Yeah, when I picked it up on the brush initially, I was like, oh my god, it looks so dry. But on my eye, it actually ended up kind of melting down, blending out really well, so I am very relieved to see that. I just will say that it is not an opaque shade by any means. Yeah, I was worried for a second, but I think this is good. I just wonder, is it like a pigment thing that all these blues always end up looking like this? Yeah, I'm very happy with this. This is a really great inner corner shade if you want that brilliant pop of color. One of the foster kittens opened up one of her spay incisions. She is on mandatory bed rest in a playpen and she is very upset about it. I put her in the bonus room so that she would at least be with me for most of the day and not be like by herself in a room, because otherwise she gets so lonely. It's so sad. But here she can hear me talk and she can see me, but she can't come out of her playpen and she's letting me know. She's trying to make me feel terrible, but she needs the bed rest. Oh, that is so pretty. I am really enjoying that. Love the contrast. You know what? It gives me like bioluminescence vibes. I used a tiny bit of this in look 2, but it's not like you guys could really see it. It was more of a structural shade. So I'm going to use it to deepen up this entire look, and you're going to definitely be able to see it much more visibly now. And I'm kind of creating a fat wing. And I'm going to also create the depth on the lower lash line. And I'm not going to bring it in too far. Kind of wanted to concentrate out here. That is such a beautiful shade. Borderline got red in it as opposed to orange or yellow. And it also has a little bit of plum to it as well. It's like a... yeah, it's got plum in it, but it's a very red-based plum. That's why I'm seeing red undertones in this color, is because it's a very red plum brown. And I'm just using very precise tapping motions so that the eyeshadow goes where I want it. This blend is just insane. I feel like I'm really not even having to put effort in, and it just blends. I was a little messy on this eye, so I'm going to go back into Bad Beach, and I'm going to use that to smooth these two shades over. So that's what this look is looking like so far, and I love it so much. I think I'm going to use Mr. and Mrs. Tutorial again, like a sparkle topper. I'm not going to use Disco Stick here because it'll kind of, it's probably going to cause a bit of a gray cast. So I'm going to use Mr. and Mrs. Tutorials. And you can see that I tap my finger into it so lightly that I create a very sheer wash on my finger. And then I just tap it onto my eyeball. And so I'm tapping it right in the center just to make it look sparkly. I am going to go into Disco Stick on the lower lash line again. It is just my favorite shade for the lower lash line right now. And I'm going to use that to just add some pizzazz. I could see this being a really pretty colorful highlighter too if you're into bluer highlighters. I'm gonna just kind of pop it on the innermost part of my inner corner just because I want a little bit of brightness right at the front, because otherwise I feel like I'm seeing some blue cast that's making my nose bridge look really fat. So just a little bit of Disco Stick on the inner portion of my, like literally, do you see how I have this weird cast? So I'm just gonna tap it right on top. And you see there's an immediate brightening effect, so now I don't see that anymore. Okay, so this is going to be my finished look number 3. I was pretty much able to get around to using every single shade in this palette in some way, shape, or form. Okay, so this is going to be my finished look. I struggled for like 10 minutes trying to figure out a good lip, and I think in the end I still managed to somehow pick a lip that is too cool, but that's what happens when you spent the entire last half of 2022 being obsessed with cool tone lips. And I did end up adding some winged eyeliner. Looks pretty good, right? I do want to make more eyeliner tutorials this year, probably as shorts because they're not really super like long worthy, but I definitely want to make more updated eyeliner tutorials. I did use some eyeliner also to draw on some false lower lashes and also to kind of add some definition to my inner corner. I used black this time since I have black wing liner. I just thought I would like kind of wanted a more strong eye today. For my blush, I used this Shiseido Minimalist Whipped Powder blush in Setsuko. It's gonna be the shade right here. Through the glass you can see it. I like it, and I'm sad that these got discontinued, but I do like the shades I have. And then for highlighter, I used a new highlighter. I need to up my Walgreens coupon game. I was trying to remember, because I really want to try more drugstore makeup this year, and I had a coupon that let me get this for, it's like I think $8 at Walgreens. This is the Maybelline Master Chrome Highlighter. I have it in rose gold. It's a warm neutral pink without gold, and that's such a rare color. This is a true slightly warm pink highlighter. So rare. It doesn't lean coral, and it certainly isn't a cool pink highlighter either. My base shade is the Peripera Ink Airy Velvet in 22. This is from the Peaches collection. I do like having them to, especially as like base shades, because I don't apply it as ever like a full opaque lip because then it's really messy, but I do like it as a base and I couldn't help myself. It's so cute. And then to contour and add depth and dimension, I use the YesStyle Velvet Lip Cream in 206, which is really dark. It's almost like a berry kind of purple kind of dark color, and you can see I put it on the lower part of my inner lips. I did the kind of Asian technique where you kind of contour on this side and then on that side, and you leave this to give yourself more of like heart-shaped lips. So let me go over this palette. And I just put it on my shelf. I'm so smart. So I'm going to go over this palette shade by shade. This shade is kind of like a smooth foil, not ultra shiny, but it's definitely still really foiled. So easy to use, and as you saw in the first look, it's so pretty. This is kind of like a transition-y color. This is like a sparkly shade. As you can see, I can use it as a topper. You can also use it completely opaque on its own. I'll swatch it really quick just so you can see like a full opaque layer. So sparkly, pretty. Definitely my favorite shimmer formula in this palette. And then this is another kind of transition-y shade, but it's pink. So it's good if you don't want to use this, you can use that. This actually is a little bit darker than it appears in pan, which is nice. It's just a really great basic shade for adding a little bit of dimension to the eyelid if you have my skin tone. This shade, I was so scared that it would be dry and crumbly and just kind of frosty, dry, bad frosty. Like there's the good frosty and there's the bad frosty. This is good frosty. As you can see on my inner corners, it doesn't look ashy or weird or white or chalky at all. It actually looks really great. So definitely a rare high quality frosty blue shimmer. This shade is absolutely gorgeous. However, I noticed when I used a looser synthetic brush, it kind of couldn't pack on and it kind of was a little bit patchy. But then when I used a denser natural hair brush, it packed on and was super smooth. This is another sparkly shade. It's white and blue, white with blue shift. So pretty. I have it on my lower lash line in the center today. I used it in, I think I used it in at least 2 out of 3 looks in this video. This is a dark based orange. It reminds me of the orange in Sugar High from Menagerie Cosmetics. It is actually not quite as orange as I thought it would be because of that. Not really my favorite purely because of preference. As you saw in the second look, it applied so nicely, blended in seconds, no fallout, like it's not even, there's like barely any powder kick up in the pan, yet you can get such an opaque layer. I would imagine that if you didn't use as loosely fluffy brushes as I did, particularly Luxie ones which don't hold on to pigment very well, you would totally be able to get a really opaque application. I was still able to build it up really easily, and then it becomes more of a buildable beginner friendly shade with that kind of brush. So that's really great, really versatile shade. Gorgeous, neutral, chocolate brown, love it. And the same for this, just a really nice rose toned brown, really liked it, used it a lot in this look. As the shade is, as you can see on my eyes, it almost reminds me of that red to green to brown kind of multi-chrome, but it's a duochrome. Again, it has a darker base. This is probably my least favorite shade in the palette, just purely speaking of personal preference, but formula-wise, it's just as solid as the rest of the shades in here. Really like this shade too. Solid, just neutral toned brown. And then this shade is kind of a plum toned brown, lots of red purple to it, super unique. I use it on the outer corner. Really gorgeous shade, great for like if you want to deepen up a neutral tone look, and it does look like this on your eyes. And all of these shades just blended so easily, no fallout. I really just could not believe the quality of this palette. I know the packaging looks a little bit cheap and it's cardboard and like it doesn't look like it should cost what it does, but seriously, I was so blown away. And then the first look, again, I wore that for I think 5 or 6 hours. No change. I distinctly remember that. Looked great. So as far as I can tell, you use an eye primer with these, I just don't see you having issues with wear time. The other thing I will say is that the shimmers in this palette are very smooth and very creamy, but they don't feel squishy or oily. And so I think that also is a really good sign of wear time. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful. I hope you guys really enjoy my detailed breakdown of things. If you guys have any questions about this palette, please let me know. I am definitely going to continue to follow Nimya for her eyeshadow palettes. If nikkietutorials ever releases more Nimya palettes, I will try, if the timing works out, I'm definitely going to put it on my will do looks with. I had such a pleasurable time working with these formulas that I would buy another one of her palettes, totally. I would buy another one to have that kind of fun again. Yeah. These blew me away. So with that, I'm going to sign off. Goodbye.